Okay, so here we are live once again with another Marvel Legends unboxing, another Spider-Man Marvel Legends unboxing. And let's see, let me make sure that it's got me on the camera. There we go. Okay, we good. We good. All right, so it's not just any version of Spider-Man. It's Spider-Man 77. They refuse to put this in any way where I can have this tilted correctly because 77 is facing like vertically and or horizontally or however you want to put that. It's facing going this way. We'll say horizontally, and Spider-Man is facing vertically. So if I try to show you where it says Spider-Man 77, then the 77 sideways. If I try to show you this way, then Spider-Man is sideways. And it's like on the side of the box too. I guess that makes sense for a guy who crawls up walls. But I want to say that Hasbro did a really nice job with this packaging. It does have a nice 1970s sort of feel to it. You've got the images of Spider-Man framed in a what looks very much like the mirror that we first see the Spider-Man costume in the actual pilot film when Peter steps into the mirror and sees himself. You're seeing Spider-Man from his own point of view, and it looks a lot like that mirror. So that was a nice touch. You've got the Spider-Man logo with the after image on there, which is kind of reminiscent of the opening credits of some of those episodes a little bit. This was kind of an odd show in a lot of ways, and I don't think it ever really found its footing, unfortunately. It was a good show. I liked it, but for example, the theme song was something where I kind of felt like they never really it seemed like both seasons of the show had a completely different theme song, and the pilot episode had a completely different theme song from either season of the show. Sean Franklin is here, and he says hi. Hi, Sean Franklin. But I did enjoy the show. They introduced like new characters in the second season. It's one of those things where it seems like, to me anyway, to me as having seen a lot of television shows, it seems like it was one where they were kind of like, it wasn't like, say, The Incredible Hulk, which was another Marvel show that came out around the same time, and they pretty much nailed it from the beginning and knew exactly what they were doing. Spider-Man seemed to kind of stumble a little bit. The first season also had kind of more like supernatural and kind of science fiction type bent to their villains, even though they were still kind of like, not comic book villains per se, but they still had that sort of like, fantastic quality about them, like a guy who could brainwash people, or a guy making clones, or a haunted house or something like that. Whereas in the second season he was fighting like coin counterfeiters and things like that, which that's actually one of my favorite episodes of the show, is where the guy is trying to frame his ex-wife for stealing his coin collection, and it's Jeffrey Lewis, I think is the actor's name. It's Juliette Lewis's dad. So that was fun. I've actually seen a picture of Juliette Lewis and her brother when they were kids, and they were on the set meeting Spider-Man. So that was pretty cool. And here on the back, they've got a recreation of the movie poster for the Spider-Man pilot, which was released in theaters overseas. I don't know if it got a theatrical run over here in the United States, but I know over in parts of Europe and other parts of the world, they did release this pilot movie overseas in theaters, along with the second pilot movie, the second 2-hour movie, which was here the special 2-part episode, The Deadly Dust. I think it was shown as a TV movie for the first time over here, but over there I think it was just called Spider-Man Strikes Back. And then the third was the series finale with that one was entitled The Dragon's Web, I think, or The Chinese Web or something like that. And that was released as a feature overseas, and that's one of the better episodes too. That was one where they actually went to Hong Kong and filmed a lot of stuff on location, So that's really cool. Anyway, the background here, we get the same kind of fisheye lens shot of the city that Spider-Man is seen leaping over in that poster. So we do get a little bit of a backdrop there. So that's cool. I'm going to set that aside for now. And then we got Spider-Man himself. Now, here's what it looks like. Get a better look at him out of the package. Now, a while back, it must have been years ago at this point, Hasbro had put out the Japanese Spider-Man based on the Japanese live-action Spider-Man series. And I'd said at that time, gee, I hope that they do the Nicholas Hammond Spider-Man, because that would be really cool. And that costume is pretty much the same as this costume. So, you know, it wouldn't even be hard for me to do a custom, I don't think. But I was kind of hoping that that Hasbro would get around to doing one themselves, and sure enough, here they did. So he's got a couple of webs and a couple of extra hands, and he has a string that's in the package, and this is going to be challenging to get out because they actually have the string taped in. Why would you tape in a string of all things? So I'm going to have to try to... It's so narrow. I'm going to have to try to cut the tape and not cut the string. And there's very little space there. And that means this string is probably going to have like residue on it. And there's nothing really special about it. It's just a string. You know, they could have looped it up and put it in there. Anyway, that's weird. You know, there's going to be residue left on my string. It is appropriate that they decided to represent Nicholas Hammond's Spiderweb with a string, because, you know, that's just what it was on the show. It was the 70s. What else are you going to do? And a lot of the times the web spinning effect was done by, you know, the actor having his hand out with this thick white string attached to it, and then they would pull it back into you know, his arm where it was hidden, and then they'd reverse the film, so it looked like the web was shooting out of his arm. Now, because of this, I don't think they went to have him do like anything special with his hand. I think they were more just trying to keep his hand out of the way of the string so it wouldn't get caught. So he's not actually pressing a button or anything. And then we have these two web pieces, which we've seen these web pieces before. A Japanese Spider-Man came with these, so. And then I guess these would be the web spinning hands, because like I said, nothing really particularly special about them. I'm probably going to swap these out for the fists that are on the figure right now, and that's probably what I'm going to leave on there. Because to me, this to me looks most like live action 70s Spider-Man as I remember him. He'd be kind of crouching and running along a rooftop, and he'd kind of have his hands open like that, and then he'd kind of do like this sort of pose and look back and forth and be kind of, you know, he was playing it kind of creepy. And that, to me, that kind of fit for a 1970s TV kind of Spider-Man. You know, it's one of those things where, like, you know, they were kind of trying to fit Spider-Man into the genre that was popular at the time, which was like 70s cop show kind of thing. It was like a 70s cop show kind of Spider-Man. And I know a lot of us, myself included, I'm going to be real about it, we would have liked to have seen some of those Spider-Man villains. I've mentioned before how Spider-Man has like one of the best rogues galleries in comics. Like the only real rivals for that are Captain America. No, Captain America's got a good rogues gallery, but I don't know why I said Captain America. I meant the Flash and Batman. Captain America would probably come somewhere after that, though. He has a fairly underrated rogues gallery, I think. You know, you mainly think of the Red Skull, but he's got a lot of other cool villains too. So anyway, much like the Japanese Spider-Man, he wears his web shooter on the outside, and he also has this utility belt. Now, I will say that the design of the web shooter and the utility belt, while Spider-Man wore them underneath his suit in the comic book, I do kind of feel like the design of the web shooter and the utility belt on the show were actually pretty darn accurate, and you could tell that they were looking at Steve Ditko's designs that he did in the annuals when he did those kind of full page spreads, showing how all the equipment fit together. I'm going to go and put those hands on there. And I was really careful with the web shooter on his wrist. I did not want that to go flying across the room. I've lost enough stuff recently. So we can pull those hands out and get those in there. But yeah, I would have liked to have seen more of the comic book villains, but like a lot of those just would have been impossible on the budget of a 1970s television series. Like, can you imagine trying to do like, say the Sandman or the Rhino or, Dr. Octopus or the Green Goblin on a 1970s TV show budget? Nah, we'll just have him go up against the corrupt coin collector trying to frame his wife. So I do think this is mostly the same body that Japanese Spider-Man had. His red is a little less fluorescent than the red was on that suit. And his blue is kind of like a little bit on the purplish shade of blue. Now, the Japanese Spider-Man and the American live-action Spider-Man did both have pretty much identical costumes. They were both made by the same costumer in New York City. I forget the name of the costumer, but it was the same suit that also Marvel used for their public appearances at the time. So if a guy was dressed like Spider-Man doing a public appearance, maybe Scott Leva, he did that a lot. He was pretty much wearing this same outfit, but the producers of the show did make some changes to it. For example, the eyes were much rounder, and depending on the episode you were watching, that was another thing it changed up. Either it was like a little metal plate with some holes drilled through it so that he could see, or it was some mirrored reflective lenses. Again, showing they were paying attention to those Steve Ditko back materials in that annual where they were talking about like how Spider-Man's costume worked, and described the lenses as being a one-way mirror or two-way mirror, or however you phrase that. The mirrors that you can see out from one side but not through the other side, like mirrored sunglasses like that. When I made my own Spider-Man shirt out of my own Spider-Man mask when I was a kid out of an old shirt, and I was trying to copy the way that the Nicholas Hammond suit fit together with like the panels sewn onto the front, and then kind of a hood at the back and all that stuff. I took an old pair of sunglasses and stitched those in underneath some black kind of foamy material, and for the black shape of the eyes, that was how I did that. But yeah, if you've got the Japanese Spider-Man figure, you can hold them next to each other and see how their costumes are very similar. There's the spider on the back, and this utility belt is a separate piece. So I think if you took the figure apart, you could remove it, but I don't really know what would be the best way to do that. But and if you really just wanted to get rid of it, you could cut the back and take it off. But then like it might not fit on him as well, and I wouldn't want to do that anymore. It's much easier to get the web shooter off. The web shooter is a separate piece too. You can see I can rotate it around the wrist. So if you wanted to have, I don't know why you would, but some people might. If you wanted to have a Nicholas Hammond type Spider-Man costume, but without the belt and the web shooter, there's a way to do that. Fred Waugh, the stuntman, was usually the guy wearing the suit more often than not, because why waste your star in scenes where it's just like a creepy guy running across a rooftop? And they might not have wanted their star to be running across a rooftop also. And of course there were more dangerous stunts that Spider-Man would have to do on the television series, like crawling up the side of a building or leaping from one building to another, even web swinging. They did do a couple of web swinging shots, but it was a little more difficult to do something like that in a live action in the 1970s with a real guy than with like a a computer-generated Spider-Man like they do nowadays. Nowadays, you can have Spider-Man do anything he does in the comics in live action, and he's going to be just fine because he's just a CGI model. But back then, they had to have a real guy running across these rooftops, jumping from rooftop to rooftop, swinging on his web, climbing up a wall. There was a lot of like really long shots of like a building with Spider-Man crawling up the side of it. And all that stuff was really cool to see. And like I said, they had to do it in real life back then. There was no other way to do it. So, that was kind of part of the appeal of that show to me, is actually seeing like a real guy doing the things that a spider can. That was something that made it really cool. And the Japanese Spider-Man is the same thing. I think I talked about a little bit about that on the when I talked about the Japanese Spider-Man figure. So with Japanese Spider-Man, they actually did have some supervillains on it, even though they were mostly original creations of the show. But Japan, they're willing to let their stuff be a little more stylized. It's almost like kabuki theater, and they understand that the stuff doesn't look real because it's not real. It's like, when you hear somebody talk about like, Godzilla in America, and they'll say something like, "Oh, Godzilla, you can tell that's just a guy in a rubber suit." Your average Japanese person will be like, "Well, yeah, you can tell he's a guy in a rubber suit. He is a guy in a rubber suit. What are you talking about? You Americans are crazy." But they have a much different view of that sort of thing over there. To them, it's like it's like watching the Muppets almost for us, where it's like nobody would ever complain that like you can tell Kermit the Frog isn't a real frog. You can tell he's just made out of felt. That's an absurd thing to say. Well, of course he's a puppet. What are you talking about? They feel the same way about like Godzilla and stuff like that. So it's like they appreciate the artistry of it and don't necessarily expect everything to be realistic. They don't have to take everything as literally as we do over here. And frankly, I've always admired that. I've always thought that was a cool perspective to have. So, but here's the head sculpt, and like if you look at some of the images on the packaging, to me it almost looks like they got his eyes spaced a little bit too far apart. I don't know if that's like an early prototype and they fixed it. Some of these are, this one looks like an actual picture from the show. And this one looks kind of like almost like they digitally did something to the face, but the eyes look a little too far apart to me. And even the figure on the back, the eyes look a little too far apart. But on the figure, they look fine. So I don't know if that's just like the picture on the back is playing tricks on my eyes or what. But the figure, to me, that's a pretty good likeness of what he looked like on the show. So anyway, let's go ahead and talk about the articulation. And like I said, this is basically the same figure as the Japanese Spider-Man, if you have that. And I believe that reuses a lot of parts from the Mr. Fantastic figure, the retro Mr. Fantastic figure with the lab coat. If you remember that one, which I also opened up on this show. But yeah, it works really well for this version of Spider-Man because it doesn't fit. He's not quite as cut as like a regular Spider-Man figure. I still got Miles Morales over here, so I'll go ahead and show him. You can see Miles has got like washboard abs, and this guy, the abs are a little more subtle on there. You can tell he's a guy in good shape, but it's like an actual spandex suit where it kind of compresses the muscles somewhat and wrinkles up a little bit when he's kind of bending over or whatever. You see the wrinkles at the shoulders. They did a really good job, I think, capturing the look of the classic television series. I'm going to get him into the kind of that crouching, sort of running across the rooftop pose, like I was talking about earlier. Like that's what I'm used to. This version of Spider-Man is looking like. So let's go ahead and talk about his articulation somewhat. Spider-Man can look up about that far, look down about that far, tilt his head kind of quizzically from side to side, rotate the head all the way around. I mentioned in the last episode when I was talking about Miles Morales at the end, I mentioned Danny Seagren, the original live action Spider-Man on the Electric Company. And it occurs to me that like you guys have already done the Japanese Spider-Man, you guys have already done the 1970s TV Spider-Man with Nicholas Hammond, and I'm grateful to have this figure. I never thought I'd have this figure. I'm glad to have it, but an Electric Company Danny Seagren figure would be awesome. And what I would do if I was Hasbro and I wanted to make a Danny Seagren tribute figure is I would take the standard Marvel Legends packaging, but I would design it to look like the 1970s Mego Spider-Man action figure packaging, like where the box was orange and all that, because around the time that the Electric Company TV show was on, they actually did do a special packaging for the Mego that says, as seen on the Electric Company. I would base the action figure packaging off of that. And that would be how I would do that. I will say that if they were gonna do a Danny Seagren Spider-Man figure, they could probably use this body again. So that would save them some money. They might have to do a new head because that one had a distinct. It wouldn't be painted the same. It had a distinctive web pattern. They did not use this same suit when they did the Electric Company. They had a few Spider-Man suits on that. Anyway, where was I? Okay, so Spider-Man's arms rotate all the way around at the shoulder, and they move up at the shoulder about that far. So I do want to show that spider on the back again. They did a good job with that spider. Unfortunately, it's got a hole in it because of a stand he doesn't come with, but whatever. So Spider-Man has a bicep, so bicep rotates all the way around. Spider-Man has double jointed elbows, and that is about the range of motion you get at the elbows. Of course, the wrists rotate all the way around, and these wrists both have a horizontal hinge, so it can move back and forth like that. And both of the fist hands that come with the figure also have a horizontal hinge on them, so that's nice. He's got an ab crunch. Spider-Man can bend forward about that far, bend backwards about that far. He's got a waist articulation, which rotates all the way around. It's just a straight cut, though. It doesn't seem to have any kind of wobble to it at all. So it just rotates all the way around. Spider-Man can kick up about that far. And does he have the drop-down hips? No, he does not have the drop-down hips, unfortunately. This is an older model figure. Like I said, this was that Mr. Fantastic from a few years back. So Spider-Man can do the splits no problem. He's got a thigh cut, so the thigh rotates all the way around. He's got double-jointed knees. That's about the range of motion you get at the knees. So excellent range of motion at the knees. No boot cut, but his feet can point down about that far. His feet can point up about that far, and then those rotate all the way around. So it's not the best action articulation we've ever seen on a Spider-Man action figure. We've seen much better articulated Spider-Man action figures before, if I'm being honest about it. But I do think that the articulation is probably good enough. It's probably like the bare minimum articulation you would want Spider-Man to have. Now, something else is when I was on Cults 3D recently, I'd found where somebody had. I'm gonna see if I can find it on my computer here, because I know I bought one. I want to let you guys know who it was that made it. G.I. Joe Classified, Trooper, The Office, Peter Parker, Nicholas Hammond, Ortega Kroll, Ortega Krloz. I don't know how to pronounce that. He made a Nicholas Hammond Peter Parker head. And he's made a lot of different Spider-Man characters on here from various live-action versions. So, but the Peter Parker, the Nicholas Hammond head was by itself. So I'm probably going to, it's on Cults 3D if you want to 3D print it. So I'm going to 3D print one myself so I can have an unmasked head to put onto this body. I think that would be a lot of fun to have. So now I had a lot of fond memories of this show. And I remember seeing it when I was like a very, very little kid, like maybe like 2 or 3. I remember the Chinese Web specifically was the episode that I remember seeing on TV. And it really freaked me out when they took Spider-Man's mask off. When like he'd gotten shot with like a tranquilizer dart, and the doctor was treating him, and he took Spider-Man's mask off, and the love interest in that episode, she saw Spider-Man without his mask. And that was kind of a shocking thing for me to see at that age, but the show didn't last too long. Apparently it did well in the ratings, but they got new executives over at CBS that didn't want their channel to be known as a superhero channel, so they canceled pretty much all the superhero shows. They canceled Spider-Man, they canceled Wonder Woman. I don't know if $6 Million Man was still running by that. Was that on CBS? I don't remember. But they canceled The Incredible Hulk because this executive thought that it had run its course. It was still doing well in the ratings, and the show was still good. So I don't know what he was thinking. God, The Incredible Hulk was a great show. And that was one where like they did a really good job of taking this fantastic superhero character and translating him into like a 1970s TV drama. And it actually worked really well. But yeah, so Spider-Man was prematurely ended, unfortunately. And got kind of memory hold for a while because there weren't enough episodes to syndicate it. So what they wound up doing so that they could syndicate it and get a little bit of money out of syndication revenue, since they didn't actually have enough episodes, is they take 2 episodes and kind of film a little sequence to thread them together, usually with like, 2 of the characters talking in a kitchen or something. It looked like they just shot it like the cameraman's house or something. But it's usually like Peter Parker and Jonah's secretary, who was not Glory Grant, but might as well have been named Glory Grant. It was Chip Fields was the actress's name, and she was the mother of Kim Fields, who played Tootie on The Facts of Life. But they had a really good chemistry together. I thought they played off of each other very well. And Peter and Rita, that was her name. They would kind of talk about, oh wow, that was a crazy adventure we just had with that guy cloning people. Hey, Jonah has a new assignment for you. He wants you to go and cover this diplomat getting into town. So go to the airport and cover that, like that sort of thing, where they kind of try to link them together. I don't know how well it worked really, but they syndicated those, and I remember seeing a lot of those on TBS, like when I was maybe about like 10 or so, and I recorded a few of them off of television. And that was the photo finish was the one I was talking about with the coin collector. I wound up watching that one in Night of the Clones a lot. Bobby Wald says, I'm surprised I don't see anybody dressed up as Spider-Man's Leopardon Megazord and have that Marvel Legends on the shoulder. Well, maybe somebody will get the idea now that you said it. Now that it's out there in the ether, maybe that would be something. And they did make a lot of toys of Leopardon in Japan at the time, and I think they still make toys of Leopardon. Like, it's one of those things where, like, even if the toy company doesn't have the rights to the Spider-Man character, they might still have the rights to the Leopardon robot and make a toy of it. Or they might just think it's better to, ask for forgiveness later than ask for permission now, and just, fuck it, let's just make a Leopardon. So I don't know if they've ever had any trouble with that. I do remember also seeing another really cool vintage toy of Japanese Spider-Man at the time, where like it was a set of, they wouldn't have been in proportion with each other because Spider-Man was practically as big as the thing, but they had like a toy car of Spider-Man's car in the show, and a vinyl toy of Spider-Man, like a vinyl figure like they usually make of the monsters. Vinyl figures, at least at the time, were really popular over there. I imagine they probably still are, but that was a set that I thought was really cool, even if, like, obviously the Spider-Man figure couldn't fit inside the car, but whatever. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the Nicholas Hammond Spider-Man. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please make sure that you like and subscribe and all the fun YouTube stuff down below. Leave a comment and let me know what you think about this figure and the series it was based on, and of course the character of Spider-Man in particular. And what's your favorite live-action Spider-Man? I'd like to hear about that. So I kind of figure at this point Tobey Maguire is probably the most popular one, but everybody's got their own favorite live-action Spider-Man, and I want to hear about yours. So let me know about yours in the comments. I personally, I kind of like all the guys from the newer movies to a certain extent, but this was kind of the guy I grew up with. So like I said, I watched those. I watched those that I recorded off of VHS a lot. It was all we had back then. We didn't have CGI effects to give us Green Goblins and Dr. Octopus and all that kind of stuff. We had to settle for Spider-Man fighting a coin collector. So, oh man, next episode I'll be back with something else, but I'm not sure what. I haven't really decided yet. I know I want to get onto G.I. Joe because I've got a lot of G.I. Joe that's piling up that I need to get to. And I will have more Ninja Turtles to come. I've been getting back into Ninja Turtles a lot lately. And, I've got this guy all ready to open up. But like I said, I'm saving this Casey Jones figure for something special. I have something special I want to do with that Casey Jones as far as like, it's going to be like kind of a two-part thing, but I like you'll see when I get it. Oh man, and I still got like a lot of DC multiverse stuff. I got a lot of Superman stuff. I got a lot of Batman stuff. We got a lot of cool stuff on the way. Don't worry. Anyway, that's it for this episode. Hope you enjoyed it. We will talk to you next time. Bye.